In a world ruled by kings and swords, there were those who ruled the fire, the field, and the cradle. Yet their names were never written in the chronicles. They woke before the sun, worked until their shadows vanished, and built the foundations of medieval life. One loaf, one breath, one prayer at a time. History remembers knights and kings, but not the hands that fed them, nor the sweat that turned hunger into survival. This is the untold story of medieval women, the hidden engines of an age of iron and faith. What was life really like for women in medieval times? When we picture the Middle Ages, what comes to mind? Towering castles, gleaming armor, knights on horseback, and epic battles. But that's only half the story. Far from the clang of swords, another world existed, a world held together not by steel, but by women. Most of them were peasants, making up a staggering 80% of the population. Their lives weren't lived in grand halls, but in humble cottages, and their days began long before sunrise and ended well after sunset. The first sound wasn't a trumpet's call, but the cry of a baby. The first smell wasn't the crisp morning air, but the smoke from the hearth. For a medieval woman, there was no rest, because her world was built entirely on duty. Inside her small home, with walls of wattle and daub, barely lit by a single fire, she was the manager of everything: cooking, cleaning, spinning wool into thread, feeding the animals, and caring for a flock of children. These tasks were relentless, a constant cycle of labor just to keep the family alive. But believe it or not, these chores were only half her life, because she also worked. The idea of the idle housewife simply didn't exist in medieval England. Women were farmers, milkmaids, brewers, bakers, spinners, and midwives. They were absolutely vital to the economy and the very survival of their families and communities. Let's take the dairymaid, for instance, one of the most respected trades in the village. Every single morning, before anyone else had breakfast, she'd walk out into the cold, damp fields to milk the cows as the sun began to rise. This wasn't a simple task. The milk had to be strained through linen cloth, the cream meticulously separated by hand, and then came the churning, turning that cream into butter in heavy wooden barrels. It was exhausting, physically demanding work, but it brought both food for the table and precious money. Records from 1388, in a document called the Statute of Cambridge, show that a dairymaid earned about 6 shillings a year. Now that was less than a man's wage, but it was still a sign of economic independence in a world rigidly dominated by men. Butter and cheese were like gold in a peasant household. With just one cow, a clever and hard-working woman could turn milk into coins by selling cottage cheese at the local market. The most skilled and ambitious among them could even rise to become cheesemongers, essentially small businesswomen, who traded their goods and earned a level of respect few other women could achieve. For those with a different kind of skill and a fire in their belly, baking was another path. Bread was the lifeblood of the medieval table. It was the food of kings and beggars alike, the one constant in a precarious world. Some women baked in their own hearths, using the residual heat from the daily fire. Others rented space in a larger communal oven from the village baker. But bread was also a dangerous business. The powerful bakers' guilds tightly controlled prices and the quality of every loaf. Anyone caught cheating, selling underweight bread or using poor quality flour, faced severe punishment, often public humiliation in the stocks or even being thrown in jail. There's a famous case from London involving 2 bakers, Alice Brightnock and Lucy de Pickering. They were caught secretly pinching small bits of dough from each customer's loaf. Over time, they'd collect these stolen scraps and combine them to make extra bread to sell for pure profit. When the truth came out, the scandal rocked the city. The men involved were put in the stocks for everyone to see and mock. The women, Alice and Lucy, were thrown into the infamous Newgate prison. The message was crystal clear. Even a woman's enterprise was watched, weighed, and if it stepped out of line, ruthlessly punished. Yet, despite the risks, baking remained a woman's craft, fundamentally tied to life itself. A single burnt loaf could mean a family went hungry. A perfectly baked one could sustain them through the week. And every evening, the day ended the same way, with the fire raked low and a curfew, which literally means cover fire, placed over the embers. This simple act was a crucial safety measure to prevent a stray spark from igniting the thatched roofs and burning the entire village down in the night. Beyond the kitchen and the bakery, some women found a different kind of power in one of the oldest trades of all, brewing. In an age when water was often contaminated and unsafe, ale was the staple drink. It was consumed daily by nearly everyone, from monks in their monasteries to farmers toiling in the fields, and brewing began as women's work. It was the domain of the alewives. These women were part chemists, part artisans. They managed huge cauldrons, malt, yeast, and barrels, a process as technical and precise as any craft of the era. A successful alewife's brewery could completely transform her family's fortune. Some became wealthy enough to hire assistants or even own their own taverns, becoming respected figures in their communities. But this work, too, was fraught with peril. The historical records tell the tragic story of Lady Juliana de Beauchamp, a brewer whose maid accidentally slipped and fell into a vat of boiling malt. She died instantly. It's a grim, sobering reminder of the physical dangers that were hidden behind every barrel of ale. And as brewing evolved, so too did society's suspicion of the women who controlled it. Alewives were increasingly portrayed in a negative light, often as witches. Think about it. The image of a woman with a tall hat to be seen in a crowded market, a bubbling cauldron, and a long, stirring rod. These are eerily similar to the symbols of witchcraft that would later spread terror across Europe. In truth, many of these supposed witches were simply brewers, pioneering women of science in their own right, who were misunderstood and, eventually, feared. Above all else, medieval women were survivors. They lived in a world where childbirth was a gamble between life and death. Many were married before they were 18. Very few lived to see old age. But even within the harsh limits of their world, they built the networks, raised the families, and ran the small economies that made medieval life possible. Of course, the nobility had its own world of women too. These were the ladies who managed vast estates while their husbands were away at war. They oversaw dozens of servants, controlled the harvest, and managed complex household budgets. They wrote letters, read the Bible, and, in some cases, even governed entire regions as regents. Yet, history so often dismisses them, reducing powerful queens and duchesses to mere footnotes beside their husbands and sons. But in their surviving letters, we get a glimpse of their true strength. Take Margaret Paston, a noblewoman from the 15th century. She wrote dozens of letters, fiercely defending her family's lands and titles during the chaos of the Wars of the Roses. Her words don't reveal weakness or fragility. They burn with intelligence, strategy, and a steely determination. She was a voice that refused to be silenced by war and upheaval. So, whether she was a peasant or a noble, a medieval woman shared one fundamental truth. She was one of the unseen architects of her world. They baked the bread that fed the armies. They brewed the ale that filled the taverns, and they raised the children who would one day hold the swords and build the cathedrals. Their individual stories rarely made it into the grand chronicles written by men, but without them, the entire structure of the Middle Ages would have crumbled into dust long before it began. So the next time you picture medieval Europe, don't just imagine the knights and the kings. Imagine the woman standing in the smoke of her cottage, her hands rough and red from labor, her eyes steady with purpose. She is the true, unsung heartbeat of history. Because behind every great empire of stone stood a woman of flesh and fire. Thanks for watching. If you want to uncover more of these untold stories buried in time, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll see you in the next one.